Hey everyone, the book we're going to read today is called Our Solar System, the Moon. It's by Gary Rushworth. This book does focus on the moon. We're going to learn some cool facts and information. We are going to journal in our writing journals and also do a really cool science experiment with Oreos. So I hope you enjoy it. We're going to start by looking at the front inside cover. We can see our big idea. The moon is Earth's natural satellite. Science objectives. Identify the origin, composition, and characteristics of the moon. Describe the cause and characteristics of the moon's phases. Discuss human exploration of the moon. Then we see consider this. Have you ever seen a full moon? Some people believe that a full moon has powers over human behavior. The moon is always in our night sky, sometimes appearing big and full, other times appearing as a tiny sliver. Why does the moon always seem to be changing shape? Then we can see our content vocabulary: atmosphere, axis, crater, gravity, lunar eclipse, lunar module, meteorite, orbit, phase, satellite. Then we have our title, Our Solar System, the Moon by Gary Rushworth. And our table of contents that tells us we will have 3 chapters: an introduction, a conclusion, a glossary, and an index. Let's get started. Introduction. Have you ever seen The Man in the Moon? Do you know the story about the cow that jumped over the moon? Did anyone ever tell you the moon was made of green cheese? We know these are all myths about the moon. For thousands of years, people have wondered about the bright light in the night sky, the moon. What is the moon? It is not a star like the sun. It is not a planet like Earth. The moon is a satellite of Earth. This means the moon orbits or travels around Earth. There are other moons in the solar system, but our moon is Earth's only natural satellite. The moon is the second brightest object in the sky. The moon is also the only other place in space that humans have visited. In this book, you will find out about what the moon is made of. You will learn what a lunar eclipse is and find out when you might see one. You will read about the men who landed on the moon. In fact, there's even a chance that someday you might get to visit the moon. So fasten your seatbelt. Let's fly to the moon. Chapter 1. The Moon and History. The moon has been around for billions of years, just like Earth. Since ancient times, people have wondered about the moon. Many early peoples thought the moon was a god or goddess. In ancient Rome, Diana the Hunter was the goddess of the moon. Egyptians called the moon Khans. Because no one could explain what the moon was, people thought it was magical. Look at our page insert. It's a fact. In North Ireland, there's a rock carving that is the earliest known symbol of the moon. The carving is 5,000 years old. The birth of the moon. How was the moon made? Most scientists believe the moon was formed when a giant object the size of Mars crashed into Earth. This happened a very long time ago, more than 4 billion years ago. When the crash happened, pieces of Earth were sent flying into space. The pieces came together to form the moon. This theory is called the giant impact theory. And we can see in our picture, the moon was formed more than 4 billion years ago. And our page insert, historical perspective. One of the first people to offer a scientific explanation of the moon was the Greek philosopher Anaxagoras. He believed that the sun and the moon were both giant round rocks. He thought that the moon reflected the sun's light. Anaxagoras was right in what he believed about the moon, but the sun is made of gases, not rock. What is the moon? The moon is our closest neighbor in space. Even so, it is very far away. The moon is about 238,000 miles away from Earth. To think of it another way, imagine you could line up 30 Earths in a row. The length of that line would be how far away the moon is from us. The moon is about 1/4 of the size of Earth. If you look at your picture, to compare the sizes of Earth and the moon, place a basketball next to a tennis ball. In our page insert, math matters. If you drove a car at 70 miles per hour, it would take you 142 days to drive the distance between the moon and Earth. The surface of the moon. Like the surface of Earth, the surface of the moon is varied. The moon has many craters. It has large plains, mountains, and valleys. The tallest mountain on the moon is almost as tall as Mount Everest, Earth's tallest mountain. The Tycho crater on the moon is more than 52 miles wide. Much of the surface of the moon is covered with huge craters. The craters were formed when meteorites from space crashed into the moon. If we look at our pictures, we can see the moon's surface, and that craters on the moon's surface were created by meteorites. In our page insert, historical perspective. At first, scientists thought there were seas on the moon. Now we know there are not. The dark patches you see on the moon's surface are called Maria. The name comes from the Latin word mare, which means sea. Temperatures on the moon. We are surrounded by Earth's atmosphere. The atmosphere acts like a blanket. It keeps Earth warm when the sun is out and protects Earth from getting too cold at night. On the moon, there is no atmosphere. When the sun is shining on it, the moon can get as hot as 265 degrees Fahrenheit, or 129 degrees Celsius. When there is no sun, the temperature drops down to negative 170 degrees Fahrenheit, or negative 112 degrees Celsius. Because there is no atmosphere, there is no air on the moon. Without air, there is no wind. There is no weather on the moon. It does not rain or snow. There is no water on the surface of the moon. We look at our page insert. Point. Think about it. Stop to think about what you've read so far. How is the moon like Earth? How is it different? Take a second to think about that. You can talk about it with someone at home. Over time, Earth's surface has changed because it has weather. Water, wind, and air have all changed the way Earth looks. On the moon, nothing changes much. Because there is no air or water, the surface of the moon is the same as it was billions of years ago. Moon maps. Since the time of Galileo, scientists have made maps of the moon's surface. Today, pictures from space probes help make the best maps. If we look at our picture, we can see Earth. And our page insert, they made a difference. In 1609, the scientist Galileo became the first person to study the moon with a telescope. He made drawings of the moon's surface. Chapter 2. The moon in motion. The moon is moving all the time. The moon travels around Earth. What keeps the moon orbiting Earth? Gravity. Earth's gravity pulls the moon toward Earth. The moon travels once around Earth every 27 1/3 days. During that time, the moon spins on its axis. This means that on Earth, we see only one side of the moon. If we look at our pictures, we can see the moon and a diagram that shows the orbit of Earth around the sun and the orbit of the moon around Earth. In our page insert, they made a difference. About 500 BC, the Greek philosopher Parmenides said that moonlight is reflected sunlight. It's a fact. No one had ever seen the dark side of the moon until 1958. That was when Luna 3, a U.S. spacecraft, sent back the first pictures of the far side of the moon. Phases of the moon. The moon looks like it gets smaller and bigger in the sky. Sometimes it is round and big. Other times it is very thin and shaped like a crescent. The moon is not really changing. It just appears that way to us on Earth. We know the moon does not make its own light. It only reflects the light from the sun. As the moon orbits Earth, different amounts of the moon's sunlit side are visible on Earth. The different shapes of the moon are called the phases of the moon. And if we look at our page insert, we can see the phases of the moon. We have new moon, crescent moon, first quarter moon, full moon, third quarter moon, and another crescent moon. The phases of the moon. It takes the moon about 1 month to circle Earth. Here is what we see. Number 1, when we cannot see any light on the moon, we call it the new moon. Number 2, when the moon has moved, we can start to see a little bit of the lighted side of the moon. This is called a crescent moon. Number 3, about a week after the new moon, we see light on about 1/4 of the moon. This is called a first quarter moon. Number 4, In another week, we can see all the lighted half of the moon. This is a full moon. Number 5. After the full moon, we start to see less of the moon each night. The moon is waning. In a week, it is a quarter moon again. This is the third quarter. Number 6. The moon appears to get thinner and thinner. Soon it is a crescent moon again. Number 7. A few days later, we cannot see the moon at all. It is once again a new moon. A lunar eclipse. Sometimes Earth moves between the sun and the moon. When this happens, the moon is in Earth's shadow. The moon does not disappear completely. Instead, it turns a red or copper color. This is called a lunar eclipse. A lunar eclipse can only happen when there is a full moon. If we look at our picture, we can see a lunar eclipse. You can see the sunlight and Earth's shadow and the moon. Our next page insert, lunar eclipses through 2013. Scientists have calculated when future lunar eclipses will happen. Dates: June 26, 2010, December 21st, 2010, June 15th, 2011, December 10th, 2011, June 4th, 2012, November 28th, 2012, April 25th, 2013, May 25th, 2013, October 18th, 2013. And another page insert, it's a fact. The full moon in July is sometimes called the full thunder moon because there are so many thunderstorms during the month. Native Americans first used the name. Chapter 3, Moon Missions. The United States first set a course for the moon when President Kennedy spoke the words below. He wanted the United States to be the first country in the world to land a person on the moon. The former Soviet Union also wanted to get to the moon. This competition has been called the Race for the Moon. President Kennedy got his wish. The United States was the first country to land a man on the moon. If we look at our picture, we can see the Apollo 8 liftoff on December 21st, 1968. And our page insert, in their own words. We choose to go to the moon in this decade. Space is there, and we're going to climb it, and the moon and the planets are there. And, therefore, as we set sail, we ask God's blessing on the most hazardous and dangerous and greatest adventure on which man has ever embarked. That was said by President John F. Kennedy on September 12, 1962. In 1968, the first manned spacecraft traveled around the moon. Apollo 8 circled the moon 10 times before returning to Earth. Apollo 8 was blasted into space by a new powerful rocket called the Saturn V. On board were 3 American astronauts. If we look in our picture, we can see the Apollo 8 crew, James A. Lovell Jr., William A. Anders, and Frank Borman. And our page insert, Math Matters. Apollo 8 took off from Earth on December 21st, 1968. It took 3 days for the spacecraft to reach the moon, which it orbited for 20 hours. On Christmas Eve, the crew made a television broadcast. This broadcast became one of the most watched broadcasts of all time. The Man on the Moon. History was made in 1969. On July 16th, Apollo 11 launched from the Kennedy Space Center in Florida. 4 days later, the lunar module, or spacecraft, landed on the moon. The first human to set foot on the moon was astronaut Neil Armstrong. When he stepped down on the moon's surface, he said, "That's one small step for a man, one giant leap for mankind." More than 600 million people watched the historic moment on television. Armstrong and his fellow astronaut Buzz Aldrin spent 2.5 hours on the moon's surface. They took photographs of Tranquility Bay, the site of the spacecraft landing. The astronauts collected moon rocks to bring home to Earth. Walking on the moon. Have you ever seen pictures of an astronaut walking on the moon? He looks like he is jumping instead of walking. That is because of the moon's gravity. Gravity on Earth keeps you in place when you walk. Even when you jump, Earth's gravity pulls you back down. On the moon, the gravity is not as strong. Because the pull of the gravity is less, things weigh less on the moon than they do on Earth. On Earth, an astronaut's spacesuit and backpack weighed 178 pounds. On the moon, the equipment weighed only 30 pounds. If we look at our pictures, you can see this photo of astronaut Buzz Aldrin was taken by Neil Armstrong. You can see Armstrong in the visor. And the page insert in their own words. When the lunar module touched down on July 20th, Armstrong said the now famous words, "The Eagle has landed." Eagle was a nickname the crew gave to Apollo 11's lunar module. And our other picture? Because there is no wind on the moon, the footprints left by astronauts more than 30 years ago are still there. And our page insert, point, make connections. Would you like to have been the first human to visit the moon? Why or why not? Take a second and think about that. You can talk about it with someone at home. Conclusion. 12 men walked on the moon before countries decided to spend time studying other objects in the solar system. The last manned mission to the moon took place in 1972. Astronauts brought home a total of 842 pounds of moon rocks. We have learned a lot from the rocks collected on the moon. The rocks have enabled us to learn important information about what the moon is made of. We now know that the moon has many of the same rocks as Earth. This helped prove the theory that the moon was once part of Earth. If we look at our page insert, primary source, Gene Cernan, last man on the moon. In 1972, astronaut Gene Cernan became the last man to step onto the moon. This is what he wrote in his book, The Last Man on the Moon. I wanted everyone on my home planet to experience this magnificent feeling of actually being on the moon. That was not technologically possible, and I knew it. I put a foot on the pad and grabbed the ladder. I knew that I had changed. Forevermore, I would belong to the universe. Future lunar missions. Though we have learned much about the moon, there is still more to learn. On June 18, 2009, NASA launched the Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter, LRO, and the Lunar Crater Observation and Sensing Satellite, LCROSS, to the moon. LRO is looking for landing spots for future manned missions. LCROSS searched for water ice on the moon. On October 9, 2009, LCROSS created 2 impacts on the moon's surface. The material blown off the surface will be studied by scientists for the presence of water ice and other materials. NASA hopes that humans will again travel to the moon by 2020. Joint efforts between the United States and other countries continue to explore the moon. Eventually, there may even be colonies on the moon. Minerals could be mined on the moon and sent back to Earth. Astronauts may take off from the moon to explore other planets. And our picture shows us that a future moon base might look something like this. Since the beginning of time, people have been curious about the sky and what lies beyond Earth. Are there other planets with living creatures? Will space travel become as common as plane travel? No one knows what the future of space exploration will be. But one thing is certain. Humans will continue to explore the universe. The moon is the first stop on our journey into space. And on the next page, you can see our glossary. It reminds us of what our content vocabulary is, how to pronounce those words, what they mean, and where you can find them in our book. Take a look at those, make sure you understand each of those words. Finally, we have another assignment to write in your science journal. Choose one of the following prompts to write about in your journal. Make drawings, charts, or other graphic features to help you organize your thoughts. Option 1. Write a description of what the moon looks like to you. Try to be as detailed as possible. Remember, you're going to make connections. Number 2, review the text. Explain why the moon has phases when viewed from Earth. You're going to take a look at cause and effect for that one. Option 3, the author tells us about the first human landing on the moon. He also writes about the future of moon exploration. Why do you think humans are so interested in studying the moon? You're going to make inferences there. So take a few minutes, choose one of these journal entries, write your journal, and then I'll show you mine. Now that we've read about the phases of the moon, we're going to do a little experiment to represent each of those phases. We're going to do that using Oreos. So we're going to show 6 phases of the moon. You're going to need 6 Oreos. The way we're going to show the phases is by twisting open our Oreos and using the filling. So first, we have the new moon. That's when we can't see any light on the moon. So we are going to twist open our Oreo. And since we can't see any light on the moon, we just need the blank cookie. So when the moon rotates a little bit and we can start to see a tiny bit of light, that's called the crescent moon. So we are going to take out enough of our filling to make a crescent moon. Now, you guys can eat the filling if you want, but I'm using a spoon. So now we have our crescent moon. About a week after that, the moon rotates a little more, and it shows light on about 1/4 of the moon, or a quarter. So for our quarter moon, to us, it looks like about half of the lighted side of the moon. So I'm going to use my spoon again to show our first quarter moon. After that, the moon continues to rotate, and in another week, we can see the entire lighted half of the moon. We call this a full moon. We need the entire icing piece to show our full moon. Next, we start to see less of the moon each night. That's because the lighted side of the moon keeps rotating. So, next we have our third quarter moon. But to us, it looks like we can see about half. So again, we have our third quarter moon. And finally, the moon keeps rotating. We can see less and less light, and we're back down to a crescent. So we are going to take our spoon again. And make our crescent moon. So I hope you enjoyed that activity. We're going to record our cookie pieces, and I'll show you that in a second. And I can't wait to see your version of this experiment at home. I hope you learned a lot about the moon and its phases from our experiment and our journals. And just think, you guys could land on the moon one day.